Hi, I'm Casper, and I'm a longtime open source aficionado, and I do have to apologize. Forgive me, for I have sinned. This is my confession of my move to the dark side. So, effectively, the real reason why I defected was the version 2 of the Linux subsystem. Now, you might say, okay, that's a bit of a cheat. You're still using Linux just within Windows. But that's the entire point. I'm not using a Linux desktop or window manager. I'm using Windows for that. Clues in the name, it's good for window management. Whereas whenever I want to do some development, I can open up a Linux terminal. So this is what that looks like. For those of you who haven't used this sort of thing before, this is an actual Linux terminal running within Windows. You can apt install things, it just works. I can check my mounts. Just to prove to you, that's actually a native Linux file system on root, no problem. By the way, I can even access my Windows installation from within here, so that's my Windows directory. It actually understands the concept of Windows-style symlinks. So if I do LSLA, it actually detects that's a symlink and also automatically translates the path to a mount point path as well. So, I mean, this is seamless interactions between two operating systems without having to bother dual booting. The nice thing is that the Linux file system is effectively a disk image on the NTFS-C drive, but it's now effectively a full subset of NTFS, so Windows will dynamically resize that disk image with pretty much negligible overhead. So you don't have to partition things anymore. I've had the standard issue when you dual boot, inevitably one of your operating systems runs out of space, and then you have to mess around with like resizing your partitions. You don't have that issue anymore. All of your free space is accessible by both, which is pretty awesome. So I had a little write-up about this. As concise as possible. Basically, all of the interesting links that you might possibly want are in a single line, including how to actually set up the subsystem, Debian or Ubuntu or whatever. By the way, Windows now has a native X11 client, so if you do have, like, let's say, a Linux desktop application and you want that to work in Windows, it just does work. You don't need to install xVNC, so here's a Linux Git viewer. It probably looks bad on the screen, but it looks better in mine. Control Q to quit as default for Linux desktop applications. It just works. By the way, you can call Linux commands from within Windows PowerShell. Just prefix WSL before your Linux commands. You can pipe standard input and output. You can combine it with Windows weird ways of doing a head one, fine, whatever. You can call executables from within Linux as well, Windows executables. So I can say, which Firefox.exe, and it totally finds it. It's on my Linux path. So the way that I do Git development, every time I do a Git diff, it's actually calling a Windows version of a Git diff viewer. So I get a nice rich diff. There are a whole bunch of just quality of life improvements, really, that comes from doing this as well. CUDA and Docker work really well. The Windows subsystem for Linux is, in fact, so performant that the current recommended way of using Docker within Windows is to first install the Linux subsystem, and then within that run Docker. I've got Nvidia GPUs working as well over here. There we go, no problem. Runtime drivers just work. The way it works behind the scenes is just insane, but amazing. It's not as bad as JavaScript, don't worry. So there's an Android version of this as well, WSA, in case you do Android development. Quality of life things that are just built into Windows but not into Ubuntu is things like color calibration for your monitors. You probably noticed that I keep inverting my screen colors rather than change my theme and everything. So yeah, that's a hotkey in Windows. Clearer text, super resolution by default everywhere. It's just amazing. My laptop comes with this tool that allows you to limit the amount of charge on your battery. That's super hard getting it to work in Linux. Basically, if you restrict your maximum battery charge to 60%, it extends its overall lifespan. My laptop came with 3 different pieces of software to do AI-based noise cancellation, which is super useful if I'm on a video call with like noise in the background. You don't get this out of the box with Linux. So yeah, and even they fix your really insanely tiny issues as well. You probably can't really see this on the screen. Basically, I filed a bug report because my AMD-based CPU in this laptop has a built-in integrated GPU, plus it also has a separate discrete Nvidia CUDA graphics card. When attached to an external display, when running Firefox and running a video on YouTube, it may, with all of these things combined, have screen flickering. And they fixed this within 2 weeks of me reporting it. If you got this level of support in Linux, I'm sure the entire world would be using Linux, but most likely what you get told is, here's a link to the Xorg documentation, congratulations, you're a software engineer now, which is probably how most of us got into it anyway. But There's also this thing, shout out to PowerToys, which is this amazing sort of add-on for Windows, which is actually maintained by Windows and is open source on GitHub. And it basically adds a whole bunch of features that really should be baked into Windows by default. Some of it is stuff that you're probably familiar with from Linux. Oh, come on, maximize, please. So like always on top to pin windows so that they never go beneath things. Something that I tend to use quite often is, I take a screenshot of things and then I load it into an image editor just to determine what the colors are on the screen. Whereas here I can just get the HTML values just by using this color picker thing. Pretty nice. There's this screen ruler thing as well, which is pretty cool as well. So it just runs object detection, which is actually a machine learning kind of algorithm. And then it does, it measures the exact pixel distances between things on your screen, regardless of what's being rendered. Pretty nice. The thing that I use a lot is whenever I'm on a website that has disabled copy-paste rather than do the default thing, which is go into your console and change things, you can take a screenshot, except this is not a screenshot. It's going to run OCR on the thing I just tried to take a screenshot of. So if I just paste over here, come on, click, Control-V. There you go. It's actually pasted OCR text. Pretty awesome. So all of these quality of life features are probably the reason why you probably want to consider using maybe Windows as your front end. I'm not going to go through all of these other things. There are disadvantages as well that come with it. These are the only disadvantages in terms of my day-to-day working that I found. Like, you have 3 different package managers to update and all of them are maintained by Windows. I have no idea why they do this. Plus your OEM probably has its 4th updater tool. So yeah, I mean, if you think Conda is bad enough, well, anyway, so that's all I really have to say on this. And yeah, I'm Casper, and I'm always happy to have a talk about open source based business models.